The following program may contain mature subject matter. Parental discretion is advised.
This is the nature of things in Pompeii. Pompeii, the ultimate ghost town. Buried alive by volcanic ash in 79 AD. A living city frozen in death that has fascinated visitors for more than 200 years.
Pompeii, it's like a time machine.
You can walk in and suddenly you're just surrounded by the past in 3 dimensions.
But I want to know, just what was Pompeii, this lost city of the Roman Empire? Who were its people, trapped in an ancient moment in time? Despite 250 years of excavations, it's been impossible to paint a clear picture. Until now. 21st century technology is exposing the first century's most personal secrets.
It's a great resource to tell me what was going on with people.
We're able to now see new ways into the past, to ask bigger questions.
For this special edition of The Nature of Things,
here's to Pompeii.
yes, I'm walking in the footsteps of Pompeians. Very sexy.
The Romans have a different attitude towards sex than we do.
Meeting the scientists who are unveiling the most poignant and fascinating ruin on Earth. Wow. That's incredible. And watching the doomed citizens of Pompeii rise again after 2,000 years. I first visited Pompeii 43 years ago on my honeymoon, and I was instantly fascinated. I wondered what life was like for the people here before Mount Vesuvius struck almost 2,000 years ago. Now I'm back for answers, thanks to the latest in digital technology. On the coast of Italy, just south of Naples, ancient Pompeii was a city of around 12,000 people. Volcanic ash destroyed and yet preserved it. We all know how Pompeii died. I'm about to learn how it lived, loved, and thrived. Walking through these streets, I imagine a throng of shoppers making way for the rumbling wagons. Now, one archaeologist is unlocking the secrets of these once bustling byways. Professor Eric Paler from the University of Massachusetts Amherst has spent years decoding these silent stones, finding clues that point to a delightful discovery.
Notice this street, how narrow it is.
Narrow, right.
Carts coming down here are only going in one direction. As a cart wheel comes into contact with this stone, turning into contact, hitting at this point, it spreads this wear across the stone. The only way that can happen is if the wheel is turning down like this, and that means the cart is going in this direction.
Everywhere Eric looked, he found more evidence of one-way streets and an emerging pattern. He's created a digital map of the city's transportation network, a picture of Pompeii that was lost for almost 2,000 years.
The entire city had a form of traffic control that had escaped our detection for that whole time.
Wow. And that recognition of this pattern was only made possible by being able to put all that information in your machine.
Absolutely. The first time I took all the data and then pushed the button, and out came the first map of the traffic system of Pompeii that anyone had ever seen.
And there it was.
And there it was.
That is an exciting moment.
I feel excited just thinking about it now.
For me, it's exciting to learn how sophisticated the Pompeians were about how to make their city work better. This is a great place for tablet technology of the modern kind.
Thought you might like to see it the newest way that we're capturing space in the Roman world.
Eric is channeling 79 AD in 3D mapping the dimensions and textures of buildings much more precisely than ever before.
And we can see the X-ray view of it as well.
Amazing.
We're still just figuring out how to use this information. In the future, people will understand how to use these techniques better than we do even today.
That's incredible. It's incredible.
What portions?
Stone by stone and ruin by ruin, Pompeii is giving up its secrets. Ancient walls are being converted back into rooms full of color, warmth, and life. The crossroads of centuries of excavation and new technology can now bring to light a typical Pompeian home. The houses were built of local limestone and volcanic rock from earlier Vesuvius eruptions. At the heart of the villa was the atrium, typical of Roman architecture. It was a type of central court from which enclosed rooms led off. The walls were adorned with floral, geometric, and architectural imagery. Often they were lavish symbols of social status. Many depicted scenes of mythology. An opening in the roof welcomes sunlight into the atrium. The frescoes are captivating, but I want to know who lived here to commission them and show them off. In a once posh neighborhood on the west side of Pompeii, Professor Stephen Ellis from the University of Cincinnati leads me into one site where my questions can be answered.
And here we've come into his house.
Okay. Well, there isn't much left of it.
No, but it's special for us because it's one of the few houses that we can actually identify the owner.
So how do you know whose house it was?
Right as you come into the house, were set in mosaic 4 fish sauce containers branded with the name of Umbricius Scaurus. He's one of the great fish sauce merchants of the Roman world.
Our friend Umbricius wasn't shy about self-promotion. He decorated his own house with mosaic ads for his famous sauce. So this was a very highly prized product. I mean, to be rich like this.
We know that fish sauce was one of the most commonly consumed products of the ancient diet. This is for someone like Umbricius Scaurus, a major business to get into. When he comes onto the scene, he actually is able to build a wealth for himself and for his family as well, right through to 79 AD when the city was destroyed.
Umbricius Scaurus.
Umbricius Scaurus, that's the name to remember for fish sauce.
The condiment king of the Italian coast lived lavishly in an age when the business of the Roman Empire was big business indeed. But I mean, I've seen how Pompeii's 1% lived. But what about all 12,000 citizens who worked and died here? To follow in their sandal prints, my destination is clear: the Forum. "2,000 years ago, the Forum's huge expanse of stone broadcast a message of power and imperial might.
The oldest part of Pompeii was the Forum, which was the religious, economic, legal, political heart of the city. There were the law courts, the public buildings. There was a marketplace.
Now, we can piece together what the Forum would have looked like in the 1st century AD. Dominating this area was the Temple of Jupiter, the supreme god of the Roman state. Colonnades lined the perimeter, framing the core of this thriving, ambitious city. But looming over it, watching and waiting, was Vesuvius. Thanks to modern technology, I've watched the streets and buildings of Pompeii come back to life. But can technology enable me to see them in the flesh.
And it emits.
Dedicated scientists and digital tools are redefining our understanding of the ruined Roman city of Pompeii. But the quest has only just begun. Today, it's about to reveal something else never seen before. What Pompeians actually looked like. When Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, death came for thousands of Pompeians who were buried in a torrent of volcanic ash. When their bodies decomposed, all that remained was their bones. This left empty cavities in the ash. Archaeologists filled these voids with plaster to see the body's shapes and the torment of their final seconds of life. But now we know that the cast can reveal much more than an outline of desperation and death. A team of experts, led by Professor Lorenz Alapont of Valencia, Spain, is probing 15 corpses from a sudden communal grave.
We think that they knew each other. Seems that they died together, maybe helping each other. And we want to know who were these people.
They photograph the cast in high resolution and X-ray the bones and teeth still intact within.
We know the teeth, we can see about the diet. We can know the sex because we can see very well the morphology of the pelvis. We can know the age because for the growing of the bone.
One cast is particularly well preserved. Lorenz has unlocked amazing details of this person's life.
We know that he was between 25, 30 years old, that he was tall.
A military sword was found by the man's side, suggesting the sudden death of a helpless soldier. But there is much to learn about this silent witness to tragedy. Back in Valencia, they are resurrecting his face.
We want to know the last moment of this person, if he suffered or he was afraid, and all this we can see in this face.
The best preserved sections of the cast are copied and pasted to create a fully formed face.
In this part, we can see the complete side of the cast. So we have to take the complete part for make what part is missing. The nose is not complete, but we have the width of the nose, so we can know how long and which form was the nose. So we use what we have for complete what we have not.
The face of a young soldier in his final moments of life.
When we see the face, we understand a lot of things immediately. The nose, the mouth was a people that from the south of Italy or the north of Africa. You give the human aspect, you will feel like you are living the last moments of these people.
Face by face, brick by brick, a far richer and more human portrait of the lost city is emerging than on my first visit, more than 40 years ago. Yet there is so much more to discover. Professor Stephen Ellis and his team have spent 10 years excavating a large working-class neighborhood on the south side of town. Now he's going to share with me their surprising discoveries. So when was it first exposed?
It was first exposed by the beginning of the early 20th century. What they had found was that it didn't really have the large, elite, lavish houses with wall paintings and mosaics, etc. They ostensibly left it for dead. So what we did in 2005 was to try to understand, well, if this is a poorer neighborhood, what is the history of that neighborhood?
Well, that's interesting because I've always thought, you know, these big houses of the wealthy and so on, they've got to be supported by a heck of a lot of people at levels much further down. And those are the unknown. We don't know anything about them.
We don't know much about them at all.
The Roman Empire, like every empire, was built on the backs of working people. In Pompeii, hundreds of laborers and slaves churned out the city's trademark delicacy.
We found a whole series of fish sauce vats up and down all of these buildings along this street, but as a sort of kind of a small-scale industry. And we know Pompeii was famous for fish sauce, but we'd never found where they were making this stuff in the city. And so now we have a whole neighborhood.
So with all of these family units here, all making fish sauce, must have smelled a bit.
It must have smelled a bit. I mean, you'll always find them at the doorway, leading off onto the street.
But these vats also spawned a mystery. Nearly all of them had been filled in and covered 80 years before Pompeii was destroyed. What could have put these producers out of business?
At that time, a tidal wave of cheap but really good quality fish sauces are coming into Pompeii from Spain. And our friends up and down the street probably can't compete.
So what you're talking about is globalization, the impact of different countries out competing and so on. It's just like today.
Yeah, so there's a kind of there's an immediacy to the story.
But Pompeii's fish sauce recession became a window of opportunity for local entrepreneur Ambricius Scaurus. He took what had been mom-and-pop businesses and expanded them into an industrial-scale operation.
What he might be doing is competing with the Spanish by converting what had been single vats into scores to produce it on a massive scale.
So Ambricius then took advantage of that larger scale production, and we saw how he lives now.
All of these different kinds of clues come together to produce this really rich story of life.
You know, I wandered through these amazing ruins, but what you've done to me is you've given it flesh and blood. I see now through your eyes human beings who are in many ways much like us. You've brought it alive. My picture of life in Pompeii is being reshaped by new discoveries that are being made in the most unlikely places. At the University of Winnipeg, Dr. Michael McKinnon is combing through Pompeii's latrines and trash with amazing results.
Latrine deposits in Pompeii are great because it's a fast way to dispose of some rubbish that I may have been working on in the kitchen next door. So it's a great resource to tell me what was going on with people at that time.
You can learn a lot about people from what they throw away, like this collection of tiny bones.
It has songbird remains, a delicacy in antiquity, lots of fish, sea urchins, and shellfish. So it's special.
There are a lot of pig bones here, too. Pork was a staple of the ancient Roman diet. But there's something unusual about these. The pig's teeth give the secret away.
This particular assemblage has the highest concentration of young pigs from any context across Pompeii whatsoever. Younger pigs under 2-3 months of age would be a delicacy in antiquity. One can envision a wealthy villa owner be the talk of the town.
Michael and his team are late arriving guests at a 2,000-year-old banquet. Pompeians ate suckling pig. But what did pigs eat from the larder of their owners? To find out, a centrifuge breaks down a bone sample into its molecular components. The presence of carbon indicates a diet that involved plants and grains, whereas a high nitrogen count means the pig gorged on meat.
This pig was higher up with nitrogen values. Maybe it had, leftover meat and garbage. And this other pig was fed a predominantly vegetarian diet, which would give a different flavor to its meat, maybe a tastier flavor.
I had no idea that Pompeians were such gourmets. They even knew how to make their pork taste better.
If you think our world today, how people might desire things that have been fed or manipulated in a certain way, same sort of practice was around in antiquity.
It's more evidence of how closely related we are in our tastes and habits to the people of antiquity. Now we know what could have been on a typical Pompeian menu. And to wash it all down, the beverage of choice was wine.
The Romans followed the Greeks in considering beer a barbaric beverage. So everybody drank wine, whether you were a child or an adult, a man or a woman. Wine was the basic table beverage in the mornings, the afternoon, the evening.
In old Pompeii, happy hour lasted all day. And we've learned from ancient Roman documents that their wine was a rich and spicy beverage, mixed with herbs, honey, and even seawater. I'm going to try a glass at a local Pompeian tavern.
Lots of artisans living around here.
British archaeologist Dr. Sophie Hay has spent 3 years digging up this dive.
Colour. And here we are at the bar of Amarantus, so the corner pub in the area.
And how do you know that's the name?
Well, on this wall here, there was an electoral graffito which stated that Sextus Pompeius Amarantus endorsed the candidate for political office. And then inside, we found on the bellies of the amphora his name handwritten. So we know that Amarantus was at least the landlord of this bar. So
let's have a look.
Come on in.
So 3 years of excavation, that's a long time. When you put together all of the things that you found here, if I say walked into the bar, what would I see? What kind of a scene?
I think it would be extremely lively. The clientele from around here, they're all working class. They would have possibly been involved in some late night drinking and some brawls.
How do you infer all that?
The brawl mainly comes from a fresco that we know of a picture of a landlord picking up 2 customers and throwing them out of the door, saying, if you want to fight, fight outside. So we know that there was a lot of life here, vibrancy. We found some dice, so we know that there was some game playing, but also possibly some cockfighting had been going on. We found a burial with a ritual deposit of cockerel sort of skeletons. So we know that this area had a long history of shadiness.
Sounds like the same old gang in the bar I go to today.
And nothing's changed.
Right.
But I think we should try some real Roman wine.
Okay, well.
Well, here's
to you.
to Pompeii.
Yes. Smells like wine.
Wow, that's delicious. It's quite strong. I would say I can see why they started brawling after too many of these.
It's archaeologists like Sophie who really bring Pompeii back to life. Thanks to Sophie, I have a vivid impression of what the Bar of Amarantus would have been. I can clearly imagine a typical corner bar in Pompeii, throbbing with locals, and maybe visiting merchants looking for some action. But Amaranthus's saloon wasn't the only hotspot in town. A glass of wine is one thing, but up next, I want to know if technology can reveal what else Pompeians did for fun.
The following program may contain mature subject matter. Parental discretion is advised.
I'm amazed by how far 21st century technology has pushed our understanding of the people of 1st century Pompeii. It's also bringing to clear view another type of evidence, Pompeii's frescoes. This is our greatest surviving gallery of ancient Roman wall art.
The importance of the frescoes is extraordinary. They allow us to reconnect with the people who once lived here.
But unearthed in the 18th and 19th centuries, many of them are in a dire state. Early attempts to protect them with wax and oil sealed in moisture and made the problem worse. Now, just in time, the frescoes are being brought to light by beams of light, lasers that instantly vaporize centuries of grime and degradation.
The faces are now shining as bright as when they were painted.
The frescoes are mirrors that reflect the vanities of the people who made them. An obsession with manners, fashion, and beauty.
Appearance was paramount. Especially upper-class Romans felt that they had to behave a certain way in public, they had to look a certain way. The Romans were a very superficial people.
One of the world's leading experts on Roman cosmetics is Sally Pointer. She's recreating the makeup regimen of a pampered Pompeian lady.
The face should be pale. You want to look as if you have people to do the heavy outdoor work for you. A tan is the last thing you need. That's what ordinary people have.
They say you have to suffer to be beautiful. In Pompeii, that meant lightening your skin with toxic lead.
They knew it was poisonous. Doesn't stop them using it. It does something that no other face powder does. It doesn't sweat off, covers spots and pimples perfectly.
Contrasting with passion for pale skin were dark, mysterious eyes.
You would use something like lamp black to do this, holding a spoon over a candle flame until you get a layer of soot.
Households had a free supply of candle soot, but the next ingredient was far from cheap.
We're going to use the most expensive spice in the world, and this is saffron. This is all about showing that you have some status. We have some here that are ground up, and then I can just use a finger. Cheeks are a very good way of looking youthful, healthy, possibly even aroused. Now, the Romans liked a little bit more rouge than we would normally consider tasteful today. I think we've represented quite well what we see in the evidence. So I think we can be confident that this is a good look for somebody of aspiring status.
Once a lady is all dressed up, she needs some place to put her splendor on display. In Pompeii, that means the games. When they were on, all official business ground to a halt. The games were an all-day whirlwind of animal fights, executions, and gladiator combat. And it all took place at the amphitheater. The amphitheater stands proud on the eastern edge of town as Pompeii's most imposing structure.
The amphitheater in Pompeii is our earliest known stone arena anywhere in the world. The idea was 360-degree seating. And so from anywhere in the stands, you could watch the spectacle. Arena itself simply means sand, because sand would be put in the center to absorb all the blood and so on from the spectacles.
On game day, fans flooded in from all over the region. The Grand Stadium could hold 20,000, nearly double the population of Pompeii itself. And now, we can experience it in all its former glory. In summer, spending hours in these open stands would be a killer. So a system of giant awnings was devised to protect the eager crowds from the sun. Hours of warm-up acts preceded the main event, the gladiators. Roman gladiators weren't just hapless slaves condemned to kill and be killed. They were athletes, the ultimate fighters of their time.
The gladiators fought one-on-one, and although gladiators were slaves, they were professionally trained.
Not many of these warriors enjoyed the luxury of a long-term contract.
You should remember that gladiators didn't necessarily fight to the death. Often, if they fought well and bravely, they could go on to lead a long life, in fact, become freed.
At the Roman games, every game was winner take all. But when the public carnage ceased, it was time for more private pleasures. There was one particular type of entertainment that was popular in Pompeii at any hour of the day. Scattered about town are hundreds of X-rated frescoes and carvings. I'm wondering, just how prominent was sex in Pompeian life? Dr. Kelly Olson of Western University in London, Ontario, has spent 20 years in the bedrooms of the Romans. So Kelly, we've seen so many frescoes and they're all about sex. Were these people sex crazed or something?
No, in fact, they're not. But in the 18th century, when excavations began, every time the archaeologists would dig up an erotic picture or a phallus, they would immediately label that house a brothel. So before long, Pompeii, which isn't very well populated, had hundreds of brothels, hundreds of them. But in fact, the Romans thought of the phallus as a good luck symbol. So it's apotropaic, it wards off ill chance and accident.
So where have you brought me?
I have brought you to Pompeii's brothel.
Oh, this is a real one?
This is the brothel.
Okay,
yep.
I can't wait, let's go. Well, yes, these are all very sexy.
Well, the Romans have a different attitude towards sex than we do. They're very open about sex. It's a very normal, natural thing. So prostitution was not illegal to visit a prostitute either.
Sex for money was legal, but most of the prostitutes were slaves who would never know the taste of freedom.
The interesting thing about these is the women in question are very plump, they're very well fed, they have fancy hairdos, probably very unlike the undernourished and unglamorous slave prostitutes who actually worked in this building.
Okay, so this is one room out of
5 on this floor.
5. And all the writing on here, are these just Kilroy was here, or what exactly is it?
Well, most of it translates as to something like, I had really good sex here, or when you're here, ask for this girl or that girl. So yeah, it's all very sexual in nature.
But it's not a very erotic room. It's pretty small.
It's
and
really
dark.
not. Yeah, dark and dank. And unless the 18th century excavators were very rough when they dug the building up, there's actually no evidence that there are any doors on these cells either. So the girls may have had a curtain they could draw across the door so that at least you could shut out the sight of sex. But of course, the sounds of sex and the smells of sex would have been obvious to everyone in the building.
And that might be a turn on by itself, but who knows? In Pompeii, I'm seeing our own era reflected in the real people who lived and died here. Proof of the link that binds all humanity across the oceans and the centuries. A link that must be preserved, because on the horizon, Vesuvius is watching us and waiting. Here in the ghost city of Pompeii, I've been mesmerized by the stories of the people who lived in this fascinating ancient metropolis. I've gotten to know Umbricius Scaurus, a fish sauce entrepreneur who made his fortune here. But there's one more layer to his story. Success was passed on from father to son. On the western edge of town are the tombs of the elite Pompeians who lived and died long before the disaster that swept away their children and grandchildren. One of the most impressive bears the name of Umbricius's son.
It was given to the son by Umbricius Scaurus himself. So it's really quite touching. He's outlived his son. If we look at this fabulous epitaph at the top here, we get so much information. We learn that the son had become a douanvere, which is a really important position in the city as the one of two chief magistrates for the town of Pompeii.
So up from fish sauce selling to big politician.
Yeah, within
2 generations.
In 2 generations. It's an extraordinary sort of story. This is a real rise to power from a family that we learn very little about until Umbricius Scaurus comes along and builds up this empire based on his entrepreneurial efforts in fish sauce. He's been able to convert that into a political empire, as it were, a political dynasty that would have doubtless sort of lived on through the generations were it not for the eruption of Mount Vesuvius.
The Scaurus family saga ends, like thousands of others, rich and poor, in the great eruption of 79 AD. We can trace their lineage and read their bones, but there is another urgent priority: preservation. Slowly, little by little, Pompeii is slipping away. With 44 hectares of the timeless city excavated and exposed, time has become the enemy.
Wind and rain, vegetation, these on a daily basis chip away at the site, and that is the death by more than 1 million cuts of Pompeii.
These walls, they were never meant to withstand all that they've been through, having been exposed and then systematically neglected and trampled over by tourists over the past 200 years. They will fall down.
Before they do, there is one more role for 21st century technology to play: the meticulous creation of a virtual Pompeii. A laser scanner is playing over every speck of the city's surface, memorizing every stone.
The machine measures more than 1 million individual points a second. This means we're getting incredibly detailed information of the buildings.
Wall by wall, buildings are digitally mortared together. Overlapping coordinates match them up to form a computerized cityscape. The work will take years. But when it is finished, Pompeii may finally be safe from the cruelest fate of all: to vanish again and be forgotten. The digital echo of ancient Pompeii can be shared instantly among experts on every continent, enabling them to assemble their discoveries before the city itself disappears.
But it's the way we record that information. We're not only recording new things, seeing new things, and collecting that information in new ways, but also accessing other people's data and other sets of information.
So with that information, you can get meta levels of analysis, seeing the bigger and bigger picture?
Exactly, and that's exactly what's needed for a complex site with all these layers of history. We were confined to...
And like a mystery novel that the detective solves in the final chapter, Pompeii is giving up its secrets without a moment to spare. Because after 2,000 years, old Vesuvius is due for another big one.
The threat of Mount Vesuvius is a very real threat. Although we stand here in the shadow of the mountain trying to figure out what it was like to go through that eruption, we're all really worried that we'll actually be here the next time it erupts.
This time, Pompeii and the tourists and researchers who come here hope for an earlier warning. To do that, ancient Rome has entered the space age.
We started working with the Italian Space Agency. The Cosmos Sky Med satellite allows us to see every little movement of the ground.
Wireless transmitters have been placed around the city. They will signal even the slightest shift in the terrain, a shift that could be the precursor of a monumental disaster.
If we lose the city of Pompeii to a volcanic eruption or to some other form of devastation, what we lose is the greatest single place to walk into the past.
The crossroads of archaeology and cutting-edge science have unlocked the key to understanding this unique Roman city and its people, frozen in time.
Pompeii, it's like a time machine.
You can experience the sights that really bring the past alive.
It's a past much like our present world of teeming streets and quiet homes. The mysteries of an ancient empire revealed and revived. The race to get a full picture of it before it's lost forever has enabled the city to be reborn.
So many people have come and learned so much about the past, about themselves, and about the way they live in communities. We all have a connection to Pompeii.
A connection that reveals a haunting truth, that in our lusts and our vanities, our loves and our dreams, we are all the survivors of Pompeii.